Our next presenter comes all the way from Barrington, Illinois, and yet another tale of designing a pinball machine from scratch with some very serious design constraints. That's been kind of a regular theme throughout this series of seminars. And we're going to hear now about what it's like when you make a complete functioning pinball machine out of Legos. So Luke, come on up.
Ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted a pinball machine of my own. Throughout my childhood, I grew up playing pinball machines, be they at restaurants, bars, anywhere I could get my hands on one. As I got older, there came a time when I gained the courage to ask my parents for our very own pinball machine. I walked into the living room, sat down on the couch, and asked my mom and dad, "Can we get a pinball machine?" And you know what they said? No. That very conversation has led me to where I am today, and my journey of building a fully functioning, life-sized pinball machine completely out of Lego. This is From Bricks to Balls. I'm Luke Horwath, 16 years old. Here we go. Every project has to start with a firm base, literally. From humble beginnings is where I really started. I have worked with Lego most of my life. I've been building sets ever since I was young, and a couple years ago, I got the idea to start building custom creations, just with parts we had in a 5-gallon tub. The picture to the right is a fully functioning, working prototype of my Lego pinball machine. The flippers use the same rubber band mechanism. The plunger, which is not pictured there as I actually used it on the real machine, was fully functioning as well. This is what I needed to present to my parents before I got approval to build a cabinet that would take up almost a room of our house. After they said yes to that, I sketched up, as you can see on the left, a design of the entire play surface and where I wanted everything to go. I labeled out where I wanted villain locations, motorized elements, and everything in between for a pinball machine. Of course, then the foundation came, and 2 of the 3 only non-Lego elements in the entire build. The picture on the right shows you the table in its very beginning stages. Starting from the bottom, we've got legs that we got from a trip to IKEA and screwed onto a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood, which we then spray painted black. We attached the base plates just with screws after sanding and cleaning the wood. And then on the left, you can see the picture beforehand of where I laid out, based on my sketch, where I wanted certain villains and motorized elements to go. Of course, it seems like a daunting task when you have a 25 by 50 inch piece of wood just with a couple Lego base plates on it, and you want to end up with a full pinball cabinet. Beginning the build was certainly daunting and, quite frankly, a little challenging, but I figured the best place to start was right at the base of the machine. Towards the bottom of the image, you can see the 2 doors, which actually both open up to reveal the inner guts of the machine, which I'll get into in a little bit, and the start of the playfield surface, which is actually a special technique we in the Lego community call SNOT, which is studs not on top. Basically, the best way to imagine it is that it's a brick wall you build straight up and then lay it on its side. So the entire machine, or the playfield surface that is no more than 1 inch thick. Now, coming with that poses its own sets of problems, but through that I was able to add plenty of supports with some extra brick below to make sure the playfield had the proper slope and sturdiness to make it through the build. I also built up the side walls there, as you can see, with the Batman logo to stick with the Batman theme, which I'll also get into in a little bit. Before the build, and especially during the beginning, I had taken measurements. And I know it looks a little odd when you're at a restaurant and you break out a tape measure to start measuring your own cabinets. So I got plenty of measurements, made sure I was going for the full size, and began building from there. Of course, since it is a pinball machine, I needed to capture the pinball aspects. 3 of those key aspects, which I'll go into in detail, are the flipper mechanisms, the plunger, and the motorized ball return. Starting all the way on the left, you can see the design for the flipper. That's actually a look below the playfield, and the white plates over on the left side of the image serve as a track for a long rod made out of 2x2 bricks, which extends all the way from one side of the machine into the middle. And when you press that, it hits the gray Technic beam, which has a rubber band on the end, which springs out, and that also helps it spring back into place. The middle image, the plunger, one of the things I experimented a lot with to get the sturdiness correct, as pinball machine plungers usually are very durable. I decided to go for a more simple approach, which kept the aesthetic looking clean, since I was able to use all black pieces as well. It's basically just an axle or a rod with a little bumper on the end. When you pull back, it's just very simple. The rubber band expands, let go, it contracts, and shoots the ball all the way up the playfield. This is a good time to mention that I didn't use a real pinball. I used one that's about a half or a third of the size, which is still a steel caster ball. This allowed me to make the playfield thin enough to where the ball would still whiz around like a real machine, but not too heavy to where the whole thing would sag. Finally, on the right-hand side there, we have the motorized ball return. That's another feature of the pinball machine that makes it so unique. Everything, including the motors, all the electronics and wires, are all using the Lego system. There's no coding, everything is purely mechanical. And what I did there is there's a conveyor belt with 2 pins to grab the ball, and the motor spins and flips the ball right back up to the plunger. Of course, I couldn't just make a plain pinball machine. I had to capture a theme, and I chose one that was very near and dear to my heart. I've always really been a big fan of Batman, and especially I've watched all the movies. I even watched a couple episodes of the old 1960s TV show, and that's a blast from the past. So one of the things I really wanted to incorporate was my love of Batman, but more specifically, and a more nuanced detail, my love of the villains from the series. That's another important statistic. This machine uses all 39 villains from the Lego Batman movie, each in their own unique way. As you can see, on the very bottom left-hand corner, I've got Poison Ivy, the top I've got Joker, and the top right, Joker's face as the playfield detail. Now, I've already alluded to it a little bit, but these are some of the more mechanically advanced motorized elements. Start with the picture on the left. It is a motor on the bottom right, and you can see the white gear there. That gives you a hint as to how I managed to deal with the motors. Typically, one of the challenges is Lego motors spin very, very fast. That's not really good if you're looking for a nice and controlled, maneuverable pinball element. So I needed to gear down the motor using smaller to bigger gears and used 4 chains of those to get it down to the right speed. And that's for the spinning clay face, which you'll see in a little bit. The picture on the right is slightly more complicated. I have an oscillating man bat on the playfield, which periodically moves back and forth. And that's accomplished through, you can see the same gearing down mechanism with the motor there. And there's a chain that runs along 2 gears, just like a bicycle would. But uniquely, it has a couple sprockets, or a couple chain links rather, which are a little wider than the normal Lego chain. Those catch, if you look along the white bricks there, the long 1x16s, those black knobs, which is connected in turn to a cam follower, which oscillates the man bat back and forth. This keeps the construction purely mechanical, and that the fact he moves periodically just by mechanical elements alone. As I was building up through the cabinet, I realized I was making progress at a pretty fast rate. With a minor break in between, the machine ended up taking about 3 or 4 months to complete, on and off, and I added some finishing touches at the top to make it feel like a real pinball machine. Instead of just being content with the playfield details, I decided to add a fully functioning roller coaster to the back glass and marquee, which does go all the way around the track continuously while you play. The coaster works with a simple chain lift, just like you would see at a roller coaster in an amusement park. But one of the challenges with that is that it doesn't have quite enough speed coming off to make it around the full course. This can be remedied by adding a Technic wheel, which serves as a direct drive from the motor, spinning very, very fast to give the car just enough kick to make it around that big turn, go around the drop, and reach it to the end. Next, we'll move on to embracing the brick, and no, not in a literal sense. I'm talking about some of the challenges I faced. One of them was, for sure, when you're building, or I'm sure as you know, storing pinball machines, they take up a lot of space. This machine and this picture is from when I was building the machine in our upstairs hallway leading to the bedrooms. As you can see towards the bottom there, I've got parts all strewn about the floor. It was a pretty process, kind of a little bit of a mess at sometimes, but it ended up getting there in the end. Another more humorous challenge that I ended up overcoming was with the ball return that I talked about earlier. I've mentioned that the Lego motors spin at a very high speed, and I hadn't quite experimented with gearing down yet at that point. The first test I did, I dropped the ball down, it rolls across the track, catches on the motor, and shoots off, hits the wall way too high, completely misses the plunger track. It was a fail of epic proportions, but that's some of the challenges you encounter when building a life-size machine. So instead of gearing it down due to space limitations at the front of the cabinet, I acquired a Lego IR link and remote control with 8 different variable speeds. You simply take the motor, plug it into the IR receiver, plug your battery box, which powers everything, into the IR receiver, and take your controller, set it to whatever speed you want, and the ball now comes out much more gently, much more player-friendly. All in all, after months of work, we reached the final product. It did turn out pretty much exactly to my design specifications, and I think I owe that a lot to my planning. The full-scale drawing I showed you earlier of the playfield really helped when making this full-size machine. As you can see, I got all the motorized elements I wanted to. There you can see Clayface, and off on the left, you can see Man-Bat, just in the corner. I got all the villains that I wanted. I got the clock, as you can see, the F300 is just the clock's default setting. That serves as a stopwatch for when you're playing. I stand off at the side, and for example, I have my sister playing. She launches the ball up, it reaches the top, I simply start the stopwatch. As soon as it drains, I stop the stopwatch. That's the very top right of the cabinet is the little leaderboard with the 5 high scores, and as I'm sure you're familiar with, the pinball machines only let you get 3 letters, so it's the same for my Lego cabinet. The aftermath of the machine was a lot of fun, to say the least. I attended Brick World Chicago 2019 this year, my 3rd time attending, which is the annual Lego convention. I got to meet a lot of awesome people, even some pinball fans who were taken aback at the machine. And in the top left-hand corner, you can see me posing with the Beyond the Brick brothers, who came by and interviewed me on my machine. Just as some context, they are practically my idols in the Lego world. They go to every show, they build mocks, they build custom creations. It's really unbelievable. It's a great experience talking to them. That's on the bottom there. You can see, posted my video. It was met with what I consider a great deal of success, which I'm extremely proud of. And even more than that, at the top right-hand corner, the trophy. Brick World 2019 Best Replica. As I mentioned, this was my 3rd year there, and I had never really dreamed of getting a nomination. To set the stage, there are about 1,000 people who come and display builds each year, and within that, thousands, and I'm not joking, thousands of creations. Voted on by a set of judges, and then the displayers, my pinball machine ended up winning the best replica at the entire event.
Wow. Excellent.
At this time, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions you may have, as I've covered a lot of information. Yes.
How much can a professional Lego builder?
That's a good question. I haven't researched too much into that. I've really kind of been going down the engineering path, but I was approached by someone at the show from Lego, so you never know what can happen. Yes?
How much did the old cost?
While I won't give a specific number, for context, when you're buying 5,000 pieces from a seller in Indonesia, where the bricks are a couple cents each, the cost ended up, and I'm not joking with you, less than a real pinball cabinet, and it's all out of Lego. Yes?
With the Brick World show, you got the best replica. What other kinds of awards do you buy?
All sorts of things, so kind of best vignette, best art, best construction figures, so all different things within the Lego community. And since it was a full-size cabinet, I got nominated for replica. And I do just have to throw, oh, go ahead.
What were other entries that tried to replicate this?
Oh, well, the most notable other entry was a full-size room full of different mechanical creations, different kind of potions. It was kind of a fantasy type thing. There was someone who had built real steel guns, yeah, at a LEGO convention. And based on the public vote, mine did it. Before I conclude, as I've been told by a couple different people, if anyone or if you know of anyone is looking for a home for an older, unused, kind of broken down pinball machine, I've had a lot of experience with this LEGO one and have dabbled more into real pinball machines more recently, as you can see at the convention. If you know anyone, please feel free to let me know after the show. And with that, thank you for listening.